Welcome to Starbound's Fantasy channel. My name is Carol, and I'll be your narrator for today. Before we get started with the story, go ahead, check and make sure that you're subscribed. It's 100% free, and it allows our stories to pop up in your feed more often. With that, let's get started. The curse spread like bad gossip. Unstoppable, malicious, and thoroughly enjoyed by those who inflicted it. 3 centuries had passed since the Demon King first pressed his rotting thumb into the soil of Elderfall, whispering words that should have stayed buried. The ground blackened beneath his touch, and the corruption began its inevitable creep across the realm. Any living creature that touched the cursed earth, breathed its toxic air, or encountered its twisted monsters, either perished instantly or worse, mutated into grotesque thralls. Maddox, a scholarly elf, watched from atop the diamond spire as another section of the great eastern forest withered below. The once verdant expanse now resembled a gangrenous limb, blackness devouring green in sickening patterns. "Another 100 acres lost this morning," said Thimble, his sylph assistant, voice ethereal and anxious as she hovered nearby. "The barrier spell only held for 6 hours this time." Maddox's ancient fingers tightened around his staff. "The 5 races grow weaker each season. Our magic wanes, while the curse waxes. The elves of the treetops, the dwarves of the mountain halls, the beastkin of the rolling plains, the sylphs of the western winds, and the giants of the northern peaks. All of them fought and failed, year after year, losing territories, cities, and hope." "If only the humans had survived," Thimble sighed. "The old texts say they were uniquely resilient." Maddox snorted. "Uniquely impulsive, you mean? The humans were extinguished precisely because they lacked the magical fortitude and wisdom to combat such corruption. Too frail, too brash, too mundane." "Still," Thimble insisted, her wispy form flickering with emotion, "they built empires without magic. They invented extraordinary tools. Perhaps they might have—" A distant rumble interrupted her speculation. Both scholars turned toward the withered southern road, a path untraveled for decades, as it led directly to the heart of the Blightlands. Maddox narrowed his eyes. "What in the 7 hells is that?" The rumble grew to a roar. Dust clouds rose beyond the city walls. "Something's coming," Thimble whispered, fear spreading through her voice. "Something fast." The city guards scrambled atop the walls, notching arrows and readying spells as the noise intensified. Through the haze of dust came shapes, massive, hulking beasts, moving at impossible speeds, metal glinting off their twisted forms. "Demons!" cried a guard. "Sound the alarm!" But these weren't demons. At least, not entirely. The lead beast burst through the dust cloud, a monstrous boar the size of a wagon, its hide patched with metallic plates, eyes glowing ember red, tusks wreathed in cursed fire. Astride it sat a figure in a hodgepodge armor, demon bone pauldrons, a helmet forged from some creature's skull, and leather cured to the color of dried blood. Behind came a pack of riders on equally improbable mounts. Cursed raptors with mechanical legs, a 3-headed wolf with smoke billowing from its nostrils, even what appeared to be a reanimated bear skeleton wrapped in pulsing vines. "Open the damn gates!" bellowed the lead rider, voice unmistakably, impossibly human. The guards froze in bewilderment. A beastkin captain recovered first. "What manner of creatures are you?" The lead rider pulled up before the wall, yanking the reins of the hellboar, which snorted cursed flame in protest. With deliberate motions, the rider removed their helmets, revealing a human woman's face, brown skin weathered by sun and wind, one eye glowing faintly purple, hair shaved on the sides with a mohawk of brilliant crimson.
"We're the extinct ones,"
she grinned, teeth unnaturally sharp.
"and we've come to unfuck your world."
Silence fell across the wall as the impossibility sank in. Humans. Alive, thriving, and apparently riding demon-touched beasts like they were carnival ponies. Humans were wiped out in the first wave, Maddox gasped. The human woman stood up on her mount's back, balancing casually as the hellboar snorted and paced.
"Name's Zira, former monk of the Ivory Lotus, current puncher of demonic assholes. You've got a curse problem that needs solving, and we've got nothing better to do this Tuesday."
Behind her, the other riders removed their helmets. Humans of all descriptions, some with ritual scars, others with glowing tattoos, all with the unmistakable air of people who hadn't read the rules about what should kill them.
"Humans can't survive the curse,"
called down the beastkin captain, ears flattened in suspicion.
"It's instant death. To all living..."
Yeah. Zero waved dismissively.
"Instant death, eternal corruption, blah blah apocalypse. Makes us sneeze sometimes. Real inconvenient during stealth missions."
The city gates remained firmly shut as officials argued in panicked whispers. Zira rolled her eyes, then nodded to a wiry human with a mechanical arm, who grinned and pulled a lever on his mount. The raptor's mechanical legs compressed like springs before launching the rider and beast clear over the 30-foot wall in a single bound. Chaos erupted on the other side. Shouts, crashes, the sound of splintering wood. 10 seconds later, the massive city gates swung open from within. The wiry human stood there, raptor beside him, surrounded by unconscious guards.
"Park the bouncer,"
he called, patting his mount's metal snout.
"Management's ready to hear our pitch."
Zira guided her hellboar forward.
"About time. We got demons to punch. I skipped breakfast."
Word spread through Elderfall like wildfire. Humans had returned, strong and unharmed. Cavalier demon hunters riding beasts that should have killed them. By sunset, Zira and her gang had established themselves in the city square, much to the horror of the elven aristocracy and the fascination of everyone else. Maddox pushed through the gathered crowd, Thimble fluttering anxiously at his shoulder.
"You there!"
he called to Zira, who was sharpening a blade from what appeared to be a demon's vertebrae.
"Human, how is this possible? Where have you been hiding all these centuries?"
Zira barely glanced up.
"Undergrounds, mostly. Deep caves beneath the Blightlands. Turns out demons don't like tight spaces. They're weird horns. Get stuck."
"But the cursed air alone should have..." A commotion at the edge of the city interrupted him. Screams echoed from the eastern quarter, followed by the distinctive sound of stone crumbling.
"Finally,"
Zira said, sheathing her bone knife and cracking her knuckles.
"Something to hit."
The humans moved as an experienced pack of hunters, mounting their bizarre steeds and charging toward the disturbance. Maddox and Thimble followed as best they could, along with a crowd of morbidly curious citizens. At the eastern wall, horror awaited. A behemoth, one of the Demon King's favored abominations, had breached the magical barriers. 20 feet tall, with too many limbs, and a face that seemed to shift between dozens of tortured expressions, it oozed corruption as it smashed through buildings. The city's defenders were already falling back, several turned to stone by the creature's toxic gaze.
"That,"
proclaimed Zira, as her gang pulled up short of the destruction,
"is one ugly dude."
The behemoth sensed them, turning its many-eyed head toward the newcomers. It roared, a sound like 1,000 voices screaming in agony.
"Dibs on its heart,"
Zira said, dismounting. She stretched casually, rolled her shoulders, and then, to the astonishment of all watching, walked directly toward the creature, straight through the pool of cursed ichor surrounding it. The black liquid sizzled against her boots, but did nothing more. She didn't flinch, didn't slow. The behemoth charged, recognizing a threat it couldn't comprehend. It swung a massive fist larger than Zira's entire body. She caught it.
I'm the holy fist of internal organ arrangement,
Zira said, her voice carrying unnaturally. And then she punched it back. Her fist connected with the behemoth's twisted flesh, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shockwave rippled through the monster's body, and it staggered backward, a gaping hole where solid mass had been a second before. Zira leapt after it, her companions joining the fray with weapons that ranged from the bizarre to the obscene. Cursed chainsaw swords, spring-loaded harpoons, what appeared to be a demon's arm attached to a stick. They moved without fear through the cursed energy that accompanied the behemoth, taking hits that should have killed them, and returning blows with unnatural strength. Maddox watched in stunned silence as Zira climbed the faltering behemoth like a morbid jungle gym, reached its central mass, and plunged her entire arm into its chest.
Got it!
She crowed, yanking something pulsing and vile from the creature's body. The behemoth collapsed, its form already dissolving into foul mist. Zira descended triumphantly, holding the creature's heart, a twisted thing, the size of a wagon wheel, still beating despite being removed from its owner.
Someone get me a really big stick,
she called to her companions.
I'm thinking shish kebab for dinner.
An hour later, the heart roasted over the human's strange fire, the curse burning away as the meat cooked to a disturbing shade of purple. Zira offered the first slice to a horrified Maddox.
Eat up, pointy ears. Demon heart's good for longevity. Oh, I guess that's not an issue for you.
You just killed a behemoth. With your bare hands, Maddox stammered. Then decided to eat it.
Waste not, want not.
Zira took a bite of the heart and chewed thoughtfully.
Needs more salt.
Thimble fluttered closer, curiosity overcoming fear. How are you immune? The texts say all life succumbs to the curse.
All non-human life,
corrected the wiry man with the mechanical arm, mouth full.
Something about our biology. A stubbornness. Take your best guess. Razum thinks it's because humans are too stubborn to die properly.
Zira gestured with her heart kebab.
I figure it's because we're already chaotic enough that the curse can't make us worse.
As the implications sank in, the gathered citizens of Elderfall began to whisper among themselves. Humans, the forgotten race, the first to fall, might be the last hope against the curse. Maddox shook his head slowly. You've been hiding all this time. Why emerge now? Zira's expression darkened slightly.
Got tired of hiding. Got tired of watching the world rot from our safe little holes in the ground.
She tossed the remains of her meal into the fire, where it sparked with unnatural colors.
Besides, punching demons is more fun than farming mushrooms in a dirt hole.
The city was saved, temporarily at least. But as Maddox looked around at the destruction, the injured defenders, and the casual way the humans lounged amid the chaos they'd both prevented and participated in, he couldn't help but wonder, had they really been rescued, or merely introduced to a different kind of catastrophe?
They mounted its head? Where?
Elder Sylvea's voice reached a pitch previously only achieved by certain species of bats. Maddox winced, adjusting his spectacles. On the fountain in the main square. They call it decorative. A warning to other demons. The Elderfall council chamber buzzed with agitation. Weeks had passed since the human gang's arrival, and their list of achievements could be summarized as demons defeated, 11, property damaged, incalculable, political incidents, 17 and counting.
These humans are menaces,
growled Granner Stonefist. the dwarven representative. A soft rumble of agreement passed through the council, yet no one suggested expelling the humans. Not when they'd cleared 3 neighboring villages of corruption and reclaimed farmland thought lost for decades. The council doors burst open, admitting a harried messenger. "Elders, they're doing it again!" Collectively, the council rushed to the windows overlooking the city square. Below, Zira stood atop the fountain, now gruesomely adorned with the behemoth's preserved head, addressing a crowd of citizens. Beside her, one of her companions, a woman with intricate mechanical goggles and wild hair, held aloft a pulsing, unmistakably cursed object.
"Completely safe once you understand it,"
the goggled woman was shouting.
"The curse isn't magic. It's a parasitic energy form that feeds on magical resonance. That's why it doesn't affect us."
Zira grinned, taking the cursed artifact, some kind of orb that leaked black smoke, and casually tossing it between her hands.
"Rami here's been studying. Turns out you can use the cursed items if you know the trick."
"Which is?" asked a brave elf in the crowd.
"Not Karen!"
Zira laughed.
"Also some technical mumbo-jumbo about biological resistance. Show him the bike, Virami."
The goggled woman, Virami, whistled sharply. From an alley rumbled a contraption that defied conventional description. Part motorcycle, part living creature. Its wheels spinning without apparent propulsion, while what looked disturbingly like a demonic face formed its headlamp, screaming continuously.
"We call it the sorcerer,"
Virami announced proudly.
"Runs on demon essence, makes great mileage, and the screaming actually helps with traffic."
That's a captured demon soul," whispered Sylvia, horrified. "They've turned it into transportation."
"See, this is what I'm talking about."
Zira was shouting below.
"The curse isn't unbeatable, it's just energy. Terrible, awful, world-ending energy that happens to give me hiccups."
As if on cue, she hiccuped.
"We can teach you to use their weapons against them,"
she continued.
"Not the immunity part. You'll still die horribly if you touch this stuff in its raw state. But we can build you tools. Weapons. Really loud motorcycles."
The gathered citizens, who should have been recoiling in terror, were instead leaning forward with interest. After centuries of losing ground to the curse, the idea of fighting back, even through such questionable means, held undeniable appeal. In the week since the humans arrived, the cursed border around Elderfall had receded nearly a mile. Fields were being replanted. Children played outside the walls for the first time in a generation. All because a band of chaos-loving humans treated apocalyptic death magic like an inconvenient rash. By sunset, a line had formed at Virami's impromptu workshop. Citizens brought family heirlooms, ancient weapons, farming tools, anything that might be enhanced with what the humans had taken to calling curse tech. Meanwhile, Zira had established a fighting ring where she demonstrated combat techniques against cursed creatures. Her methods seemed to consist primarily of hitting things very hard while shouting creative obscenities, but it was undeniably effective.
"You've got to disrupt their energy centers,"
she explained, driving her fist through a training dummy stuffed with cursed materials.
"Which is fancy talk for hit the glowy bits until they stop being glowy."
Her audience, mostly young beastkin and dwarves with a few adventurous elves, watched in fascination as she systematically dismantled the dummy. "What about magical defenses?" asked a young elf. "Our barriers?"
"Barriers are fine for people who can't dodge,"
Zira interrupted.
"But fine if you insist on being all mystical about it."
She drew a symbol in the air, leaving a trail of faint purple light.
"Channel your energy like this, but think punchy thoughts while you do it."
"That's not how magic works," protested the elf.
"That's exactly my point! You're also busy following magical rules that you forget the most important rule.
She grabbed the cursed dummy's head and crushed it in her grip.
If you hit something hard enough, it doesn't matter what plane of existence it's from.
From the council tower, Maddox watched the city transform. Elderfall had been stoic, solemn, and slowly dying for centuries. Now it pulsed with nervous energy, fear and hope, inextricably tangled.
They're changing everything,
Thimble observed, hovering at his shoulder. Maddox replied, I must admit, I never thought I'd see cursed territory reclaimed in my lifetime. Thimble's ethereal form sparkled with mirth.
You also never thought you'd see a human use a demon's spine as a pogo stick, yet here we are.
Below, Virami was demonstrating exactly that, bouncing through the market square to the delight of children and the horror of their parents. That night, as their ragtag liberation force camped at the edge of the Blightlands, Virami found Zira sitting alone, staring into the cursed flames of their campfire.
Penny for your existential crisis?
Virami offered, plopping down beside her. Zira's mouth quirked.
Just thinking. It's almost like we're gods to them. That's a bit egotistical, don't you think?
Virami snorted.
Gods are distant and useless. We're more like, that weird neighbor who knows how to fix things but might, accidentally blow up your garden shed in the process. Still,
Zira persisted.
Our immunity does make us different. Special, even. I've been so focused on punching demons that I never stopped to ask why we can.
Virami studied her friend curiously.
That doesn't sound like the Zira I know. The Zira I know believes in healing through violence and carries a whole fist of whatever. Internal organ rearrangement,
Zira supplied absently.
It wasn't always violence, you know? Before the curse, I was an actual monk. Peaceful, contemplative, boring. You, peaceful.
Virami clutched her chest in mock shock.
Next you'll tell me you didn't always ride a fire-breathing hellboar. I had a garden,
Zira said softly.
Grew medicinal herbs, healed the sick, believed in divine benevolence.
Understanding dawned on Virami's face.
What changed?
Zira's eyes reflected the cursed flames, memories swimming in their depths.
When the curse hit our monastery, I prayed, fasted, meditated, begged for divine aid.
Her fist clenched.
All I got was silence, as everyone around me died or transformed. Except you. Except me.
Zira nodded.
I was angry at the gods, at the demons, at myself for believing. So I stopped praying and started punching. Found a cursed idol in the ruins of the village below our monastery. Hit it so hard it shattered.
A smile ghosted across her lips.
And the strangest thing happened. The curse receded?
Virami guessed.
Just from that one village. Just for a while. But it was enough.
Zira looked up at the stars, barely visible through the toxic haze.
That's when I understood. The divine help I asked for, it was already there. In these.
She held up her scarred fists. Around them, the camp hummed with activity. Elves crafting curse-resistant armor under Razum's instruction. Dwarves reinforcing wagon axles. Beastkin scouts planning routes through the Blightlands. All of them working together, inspired by the chaos and hope that only humans seemed capable of generating in equal measure.
We're not gods,
Zira concluded.
But we're not just fighters either. We're, what's the word? Catalysts?
Virami suggested.
The thing that makes other things happen without itself being changed.
Zira snorted.
Pretty sure we've changed plenty. Our circumstances, sure. Our methods, definitely.
Varami gestured to the cursed fire they sat casually beside.
But not our essence. Humans were always too stubborn, too adaptable, too stupid to know when to quit. The curse just made it more obvious.
A commotion rose from the edge of camp. One of the scouts rushed toward them, eyes wide with alarm.
Commanders! Movement in the Blightlands! Massive energy signatures heading this way!
Zira stood, fatigue and philosophy forgotten.
How massive? Like, nothing we've seen, the scout reported. It feels directed. Intelligent.
Varami and Zira exchanged grim looks.
The Demon King, Varami whispered. He's noticed us. About damn time, Zira replied, cracking her knuckles. I was getting bored punching his underlings.
The messenger arrived at Elderfall's gates half dead, his mounts, one of Varami's cursed tech creations, sputtering black smoke as it collapsed. Maddox and the council rushed to receive him as he gasped out his warning.
The Demon King has returned. Army advancing from the Deadlands. Zira's forces engaged at Thornwick Pass.
The council erupted into panic, centuries of relative stalemate shattered by weeks of human intervention.
We warned them,
Sylvia moaned.
Disrupting the balance, flaunting their immunity. They've drawn his attention. What balance? Countered Granner the dwarf. The slow death of our world. The curse was winning until they arrived.
Maddox raised his hands for silence.
Regardless of cause, we face a crisis. What of our human allies? Did they survive the encounter?
The messenger coughed weakly.
Fighting when I left. The Demon King, just different than before, evolved, created new generals specifically to counter humans.
Adaptive demons, Maddox murmured. Fascinating. And terrifying.
Zira sent me with this.
The messenger pressed a small, curse-stained scroll into Maddox's hand.
Said you know what to do.
Maddox unrolled the parchment carefully, in Zira's blunt handwriting. Pointy ears. If you're reading this, the big bad noticed us. Good news, we've got his attention. Bad news, he's pissed. Time for a plan absolutely insane. Get everyone ready to move on the Deadlands. All of them, not just your warriors. We're gonna need craftspeople, singers, even those stuffy counselors. Bring everything that makes you not demons, everything that reminds you you're alive. Also, Varami says bring copper wire. Lots of it. See you in the Deadlands. Try not to die on the way. Z. P.S. Tell Thimble her wind theory works. We'll need it for the thing. Maddox looked up, his ancient face set with determination.
Prepare the city for evacuation. We march for the Deadlands. That's suicide! Protested Sylvia. The heart of the curse!
Perhaps, Maddox conceded. Or perhaps these humans understand something about the curse that we've missed all these centuries. At Thornwick Pass, the battle raged into its third day. What had begun as a simple village liberation had transformed into a desperate holding action against wave after wave of evolved demons, creatures specifically designed to counter human physiology. Zira smashed her fist through a demon that resembled a twisted mirror of herself. Same build, same fighting style, but formed of living curse energy.
They're learning!
She shouted to Razum, who grappled with his own doppelganger.
Adapting to our methods!
Flattering, Razum grunted, his mechanical arm sparking as it crushed his opponent's throat.
Means we're worth copying.
Above the battlefield, perched on a cliff of cursed stone, a figure watched with cold intelligence. Not the Demon King himself, but his voice, a towering entity of smoke and bone, its face a constantly shifting mask of expressions.
"The king grows wary of your resistance," it boomed,
voice echoing unnaturally.
"Your immunity is temporary, an evolutionary oversight to be corrected."
Varami, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead, looked up from the curse tech device she was frantically assembling.
"Hey, Zira? Evil Smoke Daddy is monologuing at us. Should I be flattered or creeped out?" "Both,"
Zira called back, punching through another mimic demon.
"It's working! Keep him talking!" "Working?"
The voice of the king tilted its massive head.
"Your forces dwindle. Your allies flee. What scheme do you imagine succeeds here, human?"
Zira grinned through bloodied teeth.
"The scheme while I keep you distracted, while my friends pull off something really stupid."
Realization dawned in the voice's ever-changing eyes. It turned toward the horizon, where an impossible sight greeted it. A vast procession emerged from the toxic mists. The entire population of Elderfall, led by Maddox and the Council, marching directly toward the Deadlands. They carried no weapons, but instead bore symbols of life. Potted plants, musical instruments, artwork, children's toys. And woven through their ranks, miles of copper wire glinting in the sickly light.
"What is this?"
the voice demanded, genuine confusion in its multitude of tones.
"That,"
Zira said with satisfaction,
"is plan. Absolutely insane."
Varami's device hummed to life, drawing cursed energy from the ground itself. The copper wire carried by the Elderfall procession began to glow, as Thimble and a legion of sylphs took to the air, using wind magic to complete the circuit. "The curse feeds on magical resonance," Varami shouted, eyes wild behind her cracked goggles. "But it can't process emotional resonance, the stuff that makes sentient beings genuinely alive." The voice roared in fury, finally understanding.
"Stop them!"
But it was too late. As the people of Elderfall began to sing, a defiant harmony of all 5 races, the copper circuit completed. Varami's device channeled the cursed energy from the ground, through the emotional resonance of the crowd, and back into the earth in a modified form. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground beneath the voice cracked, revealing not more corruption, but clean soil. Green shoots emerged, not the twisted vegetation of cursed land, but true plants, growing at impossible speed.
"Impossible!"
The voice howled, as its form began to dissolve where it touched the spreading circle of purification.
"Technically,"
Razum corrected, limping to Zira's side.
"Just highly improbable. Big difference."
The voice retreated, its massive form billowing toward the heart of the Deadlands.
"This changes nothing. The king awaits. Your trick cannot reach the throne."
Zira watched it flee, then turned to her battered companions.
"It worked! Varami, you beautiful maniac! It actually worked!"
Varami collapsed beside her device, exhausted but grinning.
"The curse doesn't like happy people. Who knew?" "I think,"
Zira said thoughtfully,
"it's time we paid the Demon King a house call."
The War Council assembled in the newly reclaimed territory around Thornwick, a perfect circle of green amid the blighted landscape, maintained by Varami's humming device and the ongoing efforts of sylph windsingers, who carried the emotional resonance on carefully controlled currents. Maps spread across makeshift tables showed the route to the heart of the Deadlands, a twisted spire of corruption, visible even from this distance, rising like a black thorn from the Earth's wounded flesh.
"The purification field works," Maddox observed. "But it's localized. We cannot clear a path all the way to the throne."
Zira nodded, studying the map.
"We don't need to purify everything. Just make a supply line. A beachhead."
Varami, bandaged but irrepressible, pointed to calculations scrawled across parchment.
I can build more resonance amplifiers, but we'll need to daisy chain them. Each one has a radius of about a half a mile.
And each needs people. Living, emotional, preferably singing people to function, added Razum. We can't just plant them and leave. The council representatives exchanged uneasy glances. Granir Stonefist spoke for many. You're suggesting we establish colonies along the path to the Demon King? In the Deadlands?
Not colonies, Zero corrected. Forward bases, staging areas. Each protected by a resonance field, each supplying the next push forward.
Who would volunteer for such duty? Asked Sylvia. To live in the heart of corruption, even with protection. Thimble fluttered forward, her ethereal form unusually solid with determination.
I will. My people can carry messages between outposts, maintain the wind currents needed for the resonance fields.
The Stonefist clan stands with the Sylphs, Granir declared, thumping his chest. Our earth-shaping can reinforce the reclaimed land. One by one, representatives from each race pledged support. Cautious elves, pragmatic dwarves, fierce beastkin, contemplative sylphs, and solemn giants. A plan took shape. A spear thrust into the heart of the Deadlands, with Zira's immune humans forming the tip. And what of the Demon King himself? Maddox asked the question that hung over them all. If his voice alone nearly overwhelmed us. Zira's expression darkened.
Leave him to me. I've been saving something special for his ugly face.
She reached into her pack and withdrew an object wrapped in stained cloth. Carefully, she unwrapped it, revealing a gauntlet of impossible design. It shimmered with both curse energy and something else. A pure light that hurt to look at directly.
The Mercy Knuckle, she explained, voice uncharacteristically reverent. I've been collecting fragments since the monastery fell. Cursed metal, purified through specific methods.
Punching? Guessed Varami with a smirk.
Punching with intent, Zira corrected. Each piece touched by curse, then cleansed through action. It kills what's truly corrupt, heals what's merely infected.
Maddox studied the gauntlet with scholarly fascination. You've created a physical manifestation of your philosophy. Remarkable.
Less philosophy, more practical application.
Zira shrugged, rewrapping the gauntlet.
I'm gonna hit him really hard with it and see what happens.
The assault began 3 days later. A methodical, measured advance, unlike anything the chaotic humans would normally attempt. Varami established the first forward resonance station, protected by Granir's Earthshapers, who raised walls of purified stone around it. Thimble's sylphs created wind corridors, through which supplies and reinforcements could travel without touching cursed ground. Each outpost became a bubble of defiance in the Deadlands, tiny islands of green amid the corruption, connected by thin, safe paths. And at the vanguard, Zira's immune humans rode their bizarre mounts, clearing the way for each new advance. The Demon King did not remain passive. Wave after wave of evolved demons crashed against the advancing force, each generation more adapted to human weaknesses, each more difficult to overcome. What began as rapid advancement slowed to a grueling crawl. 1 month into the campaign, they established Outpost 7, close enough to the demon throne that its corrupt spire loomed overhead, blotting out what passed for sunlight in the Deadlands. The air itself seemed to resist purification here, the resonance fields flickering, despite the constant efforts of the sylphs.
We're hitting the limit,
Varami admitted, adjusting her largest amplifier as it sputtered and sparked.
Too close to the source. The corruption is too concentrated.
Zira stared up at the distant throne, jaw set in determination.
Then, this is where we make our final push. No more outposts.
That's miles of cursed territory, Razum pointed out. Even immunes can't.
We can, Zira interrupted. We'll use the curse tech. All of it. Everything we've got.
That night, they assembled their strangest creation yet. A vehicle that defied conventional description. Part tank, part living organism, cobbled together from cursed parts and reinforced with dwarven metallurgy. It resembled a monstrous centipede, with a reinforced cabin at its head, cursed energy powering segment after segment of articulated legs.
We call it the Demon Express,
Varami announced proudly. Runs on pure cursed energy. Should protect us all the way to the throne. Should? Maddox raised an eyebrow.
60-40 chance,
Varami admitted.
Possibly 50-50. We didn't exactly have time for test runs. Beats walking.
Zira shrugged, strapping the mercy knuckle to her right hand. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, as if eager for what awaited. Dawn broke, or what passed for dawn in the perpetual twilight of the Deadlands. The assault team assembled. Zira, Varami, Razum, and 3 other immune humans, each specialized in curse tech combat. Maddox surprised them by stepping forward. I'm coming too, the ancient elf declared. I've studied the curse longer than any living being. My knowledge may prove useful.
You'll die if you touch anything cursed,
Zira pointed out. Maddox smiled thinly. Then I shall endeavor not to touch anything. With final preparations complete, they boarded the Demon Express. Varami took the controls, cursed energy flowing through specialized channels into the machine's core. With a screech like tormented souls, the vehicle lurched forward, its countless legs finding purchase on the corrupted ground.
Hold on to something!
Varami shouted, as she opened the throttle fully. The Express surged forward at impossible speed, tearing through the Deadlands toward the distant throne. The world outside became a blur of corruption. Twisted landscapes, horrific creatures, blighted ruins of forgotten civilizations. The cabin rattled and shook, protective wards flaring as concentrated curse energy splashed against them.
How long until we reach the throne?
Zira shouted over the cacophony.
At this speed?
Varami checked her instruments.
20 minutes, if we don't explode first.
They did not explode, though several segments of the Express burst into cursed flame before detaching as designed. 15 minutes into their journey, the throne loomed directly ahead, a massive structure of bone and corruption rising from what had once been a mountain.
Incoming!
Razum yelled, as shapes detached from the throne's surface. Winged demons, specialized hunters, diving toward the Express with predatory purpose.
Almost there!
Varami urged more power from the straining machine.
Just need to reach the base!
The first impact rocked the cabin. Claws tore at the reinforced hull. Cursed energy seeped through widening cracks.
We're losing integrity,
one of the humans shouted.
Hull breach imminent!
Zira glanced at the mercy knuckle, then at her companions. A decision crystallized.
Varami, open the top hatch on my mark. Are you insane? The curse energy out there will... Just do it!
Zira positioned herself beneath the hatch, bracing for what would come next.
Now!
The hatch slid open. Cursed energy flooded the cabin in a visible wave of corruption. Maddox recoiled, protected only by a thin elven barrier that flickered dangerously. The human crew weathered it with cursed hiccups and watering eyes. Zira leapt upward, catching the edge of the hatch and pulling herself onto the Express's back. The full force of the Deadlands' corruption hit her like a physical blow, far more concentrated than anything she'd experienced before. Blood trickled from her nose as she steadied herself, the mercy knuckle glowing fiercely against the darkness. Above, the winged demons circled, surprised by her emergence. Zira grinned through bloodied teeth and beckoned them closer.
Come on, you ugly bastards! Fresh meat, right here!
They took the bait, diving toward this unexpected prey. Zira met the first with an uppercut from the mercy knuckle. The gauntlet flared on impact, and the demon simply unraveled, its curse essence dispersing like smoke. A second demon raked claws across her back, drawing blood. Zira spun, driving the knuckle into its center mass with the same result: instant dissolution. Below, the Express continued its charge, approaching the throne's massive base, where grotesque statues lined a corrupted causeway. Zira fought atop the moving vehicle, the mercy knuckle blazing with each impact, her immunity strained to its limit by the concentrated corruption.
Almost there,
she gasped, vision blurring as another demon fell to her fist. With a final surge, the Express crashed into the throne's base, its remaining segments buckling from the impact. The cabin door blew outward as Virami and the others emerged, armed with cursed tech weapons and expressions of grim determination.
Nice to get a drop in,
Zira called down, leaping from the wreckage to join them. She swayed slightly on landing, immunity clearly taxed. Virami steadied her.
You look like hell. Feel like it too.
Zira wiped blood from her face.
Too much curse. Even for me.
Maddox emerged last, his barrier flickering but holding. The throne chamber will be above. The Demon King awaits. They ascended the cursed causeway, fighting through waves of defenders. The mercy knuckle blazed in Zira's grip, cutting through corrupted flesh like a hot knife through butter. Her companions provided covering fire with cursed tech weapons, clearing a path upward. Finally, they reached the massive doors of the throne chamber, constructs of bone and sinew that pulsed with malevolent life. Subtle, Razum commented, examining the writing etched into the surface. Says, abandon hope, in 17 different languages.
Hope's overrated,
Zira replied, flexing the mercy knuckle.
I prefer spite.
With a combined effort, they pushed the massive doors open, revealing the chamber beyond, and the being that awaited them. The Demon King did not match any of their expectations. Where they had anticipated a monstrous entity of corruption and bone, they found instead a figure of unsettling beauty, tall and elegant, with skin like polished obsidian and features that might have been carved by a master sculptor. Only the eyes betrayed its true nature, pools of swirling curse energy that held no pupil, no iris, only the endless void of corruption. The throne room stretched around them, its ceiling lost in darkness, its walls formed from what looked like fossilized demons, arranged in grotesque tableau. At its center stood a simple obsidian throne, and upon it sat the king, watching their entrance with an expression of mild amusement. "The human and her menagerie," the Demon King observed, voice like velvet over gravel. "How fascinating that you've come all this way to die." Zira stepped forward, the mercy knuckle pulsing against her clenched fist.
"We're not the ones dying today."
The king tilted his perfect head. "But you are. Your immunity fails even now. I can see it in the blood that flows from your eyes, your nose, your ears. The concentrated essence of my realm overwhelms even your curious resistance." It was true. All the humans felt it. Their vaunted immunity stretched beyond breaking point. Virami leaned heavily on her weapon, blood trickling from her nose. Razum's mechanical arm sparked and twitched as corruption invaded its workings.
"Then we'll die taking you with us,"
Zira declared. The king laughed, a sound like breaking glass that echoed painfully in their minds. "You misunderstand your place in this story, human. You are not the hero. You are not even the villain. You are an anomaly, a mutation, a forgotten species that should have remained extinct." He rose from his throne with liquid grace, towering over them. "Your immunity is not special. It is merely inefficient. Your bodies process the curse so slowly that it manifests as minor ailments, rather than instantaneous death. A quirk of biology, nothing more. Explains the sniffles, Razum muttered. A design flaw I intend to correct, the Demon King continued, stepping closer. Corruption flowed from his footprints, spreading across the floor toward them. My new strain will overcome even human resistance. Your species will join the others, either as corpses or thralls. Maddox, voice steady despite his flickering barrier, spoke up. If humans are merely an anomaly, why create specialized demons to counter them? Why adapt at all? The king's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Convenience. Nothing more.
Bullshit! Zira spat. You're afraid of us.
Afraid? Of primates who consider punching a viable strategy against cosmic forces?
Yeah,
Zira nodded.
exactly that. Because we don't follow your rules. We don't die when we're supposed to. We take your death magic and we make motorcycles out of it.
She stepped forward, ignoring the corruption creeping toward her boots.
The curse is about control. About turning free life into extensions of your will. And humans? We're chaos incarnate.
The king's expression darkened, the corruption around him pulsing faster. You are nothing. A biological accident. Your resistance is meaningless in the face of my power.
Our resistance drove you to adapt,
Zira countered.
Our chaos forced you to evolve. Face it, Your Majesty, we scare the shit out of you. Because we're the one thing you can't predict or control.
Fury flashed across the king's perfect features. With a gesture, the corruption surged forward, wrapping around the intruders like living tendrils. Virami and Razum struggled against the restraints, their immunity barely keeping the corruption from burning through their flesh. Only Zira remained free, the mercy knuckle blazing where the corruption touched it, keeping the tendrils at bay. You think yourself a champion? The king snarled, his veneer of civility cracking. A savior? What gives you the right to challenge my domain? Zira flexed her fingers around the mercy knuckle, its light pulsing in time with her heartbeat.
I don't need the right.
The king raised an elegant eyebrow.
I have the left to.
She finished, and launched herself forward. The mercy knuckle connected with the king's perfect jaw, and for an instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, reality itself shuddered, as curse energy and purified intent collided. The king staggered backward, black ichor leaking from the point of impact. Impossible! He roared, all pretense of humanity vanishing as his form began to shift. Limbs elongating, features distorting, perfect skin cracking to reveal the corruption beneath.
Heard that one before,
Zira grunted, pressing her advantage. She drove forward with a flurry of blows, each impact of the mercy knuckle sending shockwaves through the chamber. The king fought back with terrible power. Blades of pure corruption extended from his transformed limbs, slashing at Zira, with precision born of eons of combat. Where they connected, her flesh sizzled and blackened. Immunity pushed beyond its limits. Around them, the throne room began to destabilize. Cracks appeared in reality itself. Vistas of other realms flickering through the ruptures. Worlds consumed by the curse. Worlds yet untouched. Worlds in between. Maddox, still protected by his fading barrier, recognized what was happening. The king is not just a being, he called to Zira. He's a nexus, a connection point between realms. The curse spread through him. Zira, bleeding from a dozen wounds, caught the king's blade on the mercy knuckle. The corrupted weapon shattered against the purified gauntlet.
So, I just need to break the connection?
She panted. The throne! Maddox pointed to the obsidian seat. It anchors him to this reality. The king realized their intent and roared in fury, redoubling his assault. Corruption poured from his transforming body. the concentrated essence filling the chamber with choking miasma. Varami, still bound by corruption tendrils, managed to reach one of her devices.
Zira! Catch!
She hurled a small, pulsing object through the air. Zira caught it one-handed, a resonance amplifier, miniaturized and modified. Understanding dawned. She slammed it against the mercy knuckle, where it adhered with a flash of light.
Let's see how you handle emotional resonance, Your Majesty,
she growled, and charged. The king moved to intercept, but Razum, who had worked one arm free, fired a curse tech weapon that caught the demon in the back, momentarily staggering him. The opening was all Zira needed. She leapt past the king, landed before the throne, and drove the amplified mercy knuckle directly into its obsidian surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the gauntlet sank into the throne as if it were liquid, the amplifier humming at an increasing pitch. Light. Pure, clean light spilled from the point of impact, spreading through the obsidian in glowing veins.
No!
The king lunged toward her, but too late. Zira looked him directly in his void-like eyes and spoke a single word.
Heal!
The throne shattered. Reality cracked open like an egg. Curse energy flooded from the king's body as his connection to other realms destabilized. He writhed in agony, perfect form dissolving into components of corruption and bone and ancient hate.
What have you done?
He shrieked, voice distorting as his physical form failed. Zira, exhausted beyond measure, managed a bloodied grin.
Rearranged your internal organs. It's, kind of my thing.
The king's form collapsed entirely, curse energy pouring from the dissolving mass like black blood. But instead of spreading, it spiraled upward, drawn through the cracks in reality, pulled back to the realms from which it had been summoned. The corruption restraining Varami and Razum dissolved. Maddox's barrier finally failed, but the corruption around them was already retreating, pulled toward the vortex of energy where the throne had stood.
We need to get out!
Varami shouted over the roar of energy.
This whole place is coming down!
They staggered toward the exit, supporting each other through the disintegrating throne room. Behind them, what remained of the Demon King wailed in diminishing fury, as his essence dispersed across 1,000 realms, still existing, but diluted beyond the ability to manifest physical form. They barely reached the causeway before the throne chamber collapsed entirely, taking with it the heart of the curse's power. The corruption didn't vanish. Centuries of influence couldn't be undone in an instant, but its driving will, its active malevolence, was gone. Zira collapsed outside, the mercy knuckle now dark and dormant on her blistered hand. Blood flowed freely from her nose, her eyes, her ears, the price of extended exposure to concentrated curse energy.
Did we win?
She asked weakly. Varami looked around at the deadlands, still cursed, still corrupt, but somehow less vitally so. Already the spread had stopped. The corruption had become static, no longer driven by consciousness.
Yeah,
she said, supporting her friend's head.
We won. The curse is just, energy now. No will behind it. Great!
Zira coughed.
'Cause I'm all out of punches.
Maddox knelt beside her, his ancient eyes filled with concern. The corruption in your system
will probably just give me one hell of a headache,
Zira finished.
Relax, pointy ears. Immunity, remember? Just need a nap. For about a year.
As the others laughed in exhausted relief, Razum pointed to the horizon.
Look.
Beyond the corrupted wastes of the Deadlands, past the chain of outposts they'd established, a thin line of green was visible. The first territories reclaimed from the curse, growing stronger without the active will of the king to fight them. It's going to be a long recovery, Maddox observed.
Yeah,
Zira agreed, struggling to sit up.
But At least now there's something to recover.
6 months later, Elderfall barely resembled the somber, dying city it had once been. New construction rose alongside ancient architecture. Markets bustled with traders from all 5 races, and the 6th that had rejoined them. Humans. They emerged from hiding places across the realm. Underground bunkers, remote islands, cursed territories too dangerous for others to investigate. Each with their own adaptations, their own immune systems, their own chaotic approaches to surviving the apocalypse. With the Demon King's driving will removed from the curse, the corruption remained, but no longer spread actively. Varami's resonance technology, combined with traditional magic from the 5 races, steadily reclaimed territory. Cities were rebuilt, farmland recovered. Life, in its stubborn way, continued. Maddox stood on his balcony in the Diamond Spire, watching workers below install a particularly questionable piece of curse tech machinery in the central fountain. Something Varami claimed would make the water change colors based on your mood, but which occasionally produced small explosions instead.
They're integrating well,
Thimble observed, hovering at his shoulder. Chaotically, Maddox corrected with a faint smile. But yes, the humans bring vitality. Below, a minor explosion sent a plume of rainbow-colored water into the air. Citizens scattered, laughing rather than frightened. 6 months ago, such an incident would have caused panic. Now it was just Tuesday.
The latest reports from the outposts are promising,
Thimble continued.
The reclamation proceeds faster than expected. Almost 40% of the originally corrupted territory shows signs of recovery.
And the remaining corruption?
It's stable, dangerous, but not expanding.
Thimble's form shimmered thoughtfully.
Some of the human engineers have proposed, using it?
Maddox raised an eyebrow. Using the curse?
As an energy source, contained, controlled. They're calling it renewable apocalypse.
The old elf chuckled despite himself. Of course they are. Across the city, in what had once been Elderfall's most prestigious district, a new establishment had opened to mixed reviews. A simple wooden sign hung above the door. The Last Punch, Bakery and Tavern. Inside, Zira kneaded dough with practiced motions. Her powerful arms, once used primarily for rearranging demonic organs, now channeling their strength into creating the perfect crust. The mercy knuckle hung on the wall behind the counter, dormant but honored. The bakery smelled of fresh bread and sweet pastries, with an underlying note of brimstone, courtesy of the cursed oven that Varami had modified for her. It cooked bread in half the normal time, and occasionally made it float.
Order up,
Zira called, sliding a tray of steaming rolls onto the counter.
Razor, table 4 wants the special.
Razum, now sporting an upgraded mechanical arm with integrated bottle opener, nodded and collected the tray. His other arm cradled a sleeping infant, his daughter with one of the beastkin warriors they'd fought alongside, her tiny form displaying both human and fox-like features in improbable harmony. The tavern portion of the establishment buzzed with activity. Representatives of all 6 races gathered around tables, crafted from salvaged throne room debris. Maps spread across some tables showed expedition routes into still corrupted territories. Others displayed plans for new curse tech innovations. A few simply hosted card games, with rules that seemed to change every round. The tavern door opened. A young elf entered hesitantly, clearly from one of the older aristocratic families, based on his elaborate robes and carefully neutral expression.
Can I help ya?
Zira asked, recognizing the look of someone with a problem that needed solving. I heard that you accept cursed currency, the elf said cautiously, glancing around at the eclectic clientele.
Among other things.
Zira gestured to a sign listing acceptable payment methods, which included functioning curse tech, interesting stories, and good faith efforts. The elf produced a small box, ornately carved but leaking faint wisps of corruption. This has been in my family for generations. Before the curse, it was a music box. Now it screams.
Let me see,
Virami interjected. Professional curiosity piqued. She took the box, examining it with her goggles.
Oh, basic corruption pattern. Easy fix.
How much? The elf asked. Zira considered him.
One condition. When it's fixed, bring it back and play it for everyone here. Music's in short supply these days.
The elf blinked in surprise, then nodded solemnly. It would be an honor. Later that evening, as the tavern filled with regulars and the smell of fresh bread gave way to that of hearty stew, the elf returned with his repaired music box. Conversation quieted as he wound the mechanism. The melody that emerged was hauntingly beautiful, a pre-curse composition that few remembered. For a moment, the chaotic energy that defined the new world stilled, replaced by something quieter and more contemplative. Zira leaned against the counter, watching the faces of her patrons as they listened. Humans with their scars and adaptations, elves with their ancient memories, dwarves, beastkin, sylphs, and even a young giant crouched in the doorway, all united in appreciation of something that had almost been lost forever. The curse had changed everything, and in the process, revealed what couldn't be changed. When the music faded, conversations resumed, but with a gentler tone. Zira served drinks, collected payments in various currencies, and settled disputes with firm words rather than fists. Maddox entered as the evening deepened, accompanied by Thimble. The old elf surveyed the establishment with scholarly interest. "Remarkable," he said, accepting the mug Zira offered. 6 months ago, you were punching demon kings. Now you're serving ale and breaking bread.
Sometimes healing hurts,
Zira shrugged.
Sometimes it doesn't have to.
And which do you prefer? Thimble asked curiously. Zira glanced around her domain, at the mercy knuckle hanging retired but ready, at her friends and former enemies, breaking bread together, at the maps of expeditions yet to come and territories yet to heal.
Turns out, she said with a slow smile, I'm pretty good at both.
Outside, night fell on a world still scarred, but no longer dying. Cursed territory remained, but now it was contained, understood, sometimes even utilized. The 5 great races had become 6 again, stronger for the chaos that humanity brought with it. In the distance, the deadlands stood, a monument to what had almost been, a reminder of what still needed healing. And beneath Elderfall, in workshops and laboratories and forges, humans and their new allies built machines and weapons and, occasionally, medical devices from the cursed parts of their world. Because sometimes the cure is crazier than the disease. That's humanity for you.